Hey all, Brandon here with Bee Free Builds. Me and Max are going to show you how we're transforming this hillside into an orchard. It's been about a year of work getting this peach tree established and ready to blossom. We've spent that time iteratively transforming this hillside of dense brush into what will hopefully become a productive orchard. We've got some cherry trees that are starting to blossom, a few plum trees that are doing really well, along with some apple and peach trees. We're really trying to get some diversity to see what grows best out here. Some of them are getting established nicely and even putting out some flowers. It's a little rough and certainly needs some manicuring, but the orchard is starting to take shape. The key focus has been getting some trees in the ground and growing. Like the saying goes, the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago or right now. We've made a lot of progress, and a lot of these trees have made a very promising start looking over this valley. But the journey's been anything but smooth. We've lost trees to irrigation issues and learned lessons the hard way. Let me show you how we got here. This north-facing hillside has its challenges, but I believe it's the perfect spot for an orchard. Last summer, I started small, just getting a few trees in the ground while figuring out irrigation. Being in Zone 8B, I decided peaches and plums would be good first candidates. The sandy soil made digging easier, though the nutritional content is questionable. I got a recommendation from a local nursery owner to use these gopher baskets since they're known to be menaces out here. I planted a mix of amended soil and native dirt to give the trees some nutrients while helping them adjust to what's naturally here. These trees were irrigated with some basic drip irrigation on a timer. After planting, I added a few inches of mulch around each tree to help maintain moisture and keep the weeds down. The root balls were pretty compacted, and looking back, I should have broken them up more, so we'll see how they do. This first round of trees was my test bed, and honestly, more trees than I've ever planted in my life. I really just wanted to see what would grow well out here and make sure my irrigation system was foolproof before expanding on the system. These gopher baskets are pretty sturdy. They're basically just chicken wire with 3/4-inch holes. These will decompose over time, and the roots will get big enough to defend themselves. An alternative I found online were these gopher bags. They're a lot more flexible and have a fine mesh, but it's hard to say how well they'll defend against the gophers. I guess only time will tell. Here's a quick tour through the brush where I planted the first trees. I ran drip lines to each, which eventually got covered with mulch. These trees were nestled into the wild landscape, which seemed like a good idea. Unfortunately, by spring, only 2 out of the 5 survived. Wildlife kept chewing through my irrigation lines, which was a problem I had to solve. After a few battles with the wildlife over my irrigation lines, I decided to bury them as much as I could. This seemed to help a pretty good amount. I still expect to see chewed up lines every time I come up though. Over winter, I cleared back more brush to make room for expansion and give the trees some proper space. This helped me better understand the layout and plan the next phase. This summer, I'll likely clear it more thoroughly, but my priority was getting the trees in the ground before spring. I cleared just enough to plant 3 rows of 5 trees each. It's roughly oriented from east to west, which would be nice for the hot summers. There's plenty of space to expand over the coming years. If all goes well, next winter I'll try and double the size of this orchard. In February, I planted the rest of the orchard, bringing the total to 15 trees. That's 10 fruit trees and 5 black locusts. I learned that stone fruit and apples do really well up here, so that's why I focused on these for the fruit. Aside from clearing the brush, one of the other labor-intensive tasks was digging a trench and burying the drip line. This seemed to go a long way to preventing animals from messing with the drip lines. I've only buried the first row so far. I've been pretty lucky with the other 2, but I imagine I'll be doing those pretty soon as well. With the goal of applying permaculture principles, I've decided to plant companion trees along with the fruit trees. The black locusts won't produce any fruit, but they should help with the overall health of the orchard. The black locusts came next. They're nitrogen fixers that should improve the soil for the fruit trees. I'll need to manage their height so they don't create too much shade. This was my first time planting bare root trees, so I expected some losses. For these, I used gopher bags. They're easier to install since there's no bending chicken wire. I added plenty of mulch around each tree to retain the moisture and protect the irrigation line, which has reduced the wildlife damage so far. Once I got these all planted, I watered them in fully, which is a good test of my newly expanded irrigation system. I followed a similar process to get the rest of the fruit trees in the ground. Then, a few months later, these young fruit trees are showing promising signs of establishing themselves. The summer sun up here is pretty brutal, so I whitewashed the trunks of the trees on the southern side to help with that a bit. This peach tree was one of the originals that survived. Its blossoms are vibrant and promising. Mac seems to be more interested in the wildlife sense out here though. I'm not expecting fruit this year, but these blossoms give me hope for the future. This is the only black locust really taking off. It's just a little stick with a few leaves on top, but it's a start. Hopefully the others will follow. Here's one of its siblings. It looks almost the same as when I planted it. Not dried out yet though, so there's still hope. The plums are the overachievers of this orchard. They're flowering extensively, even though March seems a little early for this much bloom. This is another plum that's really thriving. Definitely one of the greener trees so far. This cherry is showing subtle signs of life. Not as dramatic as the plums, but progress is progress. This Honeycrisp apple is the slowest starter, but it's still alive, which is something to celebrate at this stage. Pink ladies are my favorite apples, so I'm particularly hopeful that this one establishes itself strongly. Here's another plum. These might be the champion of this young orchard so far. The other cherry has some blossoms on it, a good sign it's preparing for a growth year ahead. The gala apple is also doing well, with fresh leaves emerging nicely. It may not look like much yet, but now that the trees are in the ground, I can focus on cleaning up the area and adding additional mold. I'm hoping this hillside transforms into something amazing in the coming years. It has a ton of potential to be something beautiful and productive. There's still so much to learn. I'll see what thrives here and expand again next winter. Meanwhile, I'm researching companion plants to introduce some permaculture principles. I've already learned some hard lessons about irrigation, which I'll share in another video. Let me know what you think in the comments. I'm eager to learn and make this orchard work. Thanks for watching. See you next time on Beef Free Builds.